Good day, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Anastasiya Voytyuk, and we're today to start the discussion, the arts for disabled people. Who are we creating for? When we are speaking about the importance of the arts with people for people with disability, we all agree that it's needed for the society. But whether the people understand what this kind of art is, how this art is being created, we sometimes applying additional stereotypes of kindness, but we're not mentioning the ideal, the understanding the artistic value of it. We are applying this filter of disability. We're actually saying that it's socially acceptable. That is why it has the value. But the arts for the people with disability and of the people with disability is outside of the social value. It becomes the value on its own pace. All of the people can express their own opinions, their own thoughts through theater, dance, through art, because there is not a single diagnosis that will be much more important than personality itself. And throughout our discussion today, we would like to talk about how society treats the art of people with disability in UK, in Georgia, in Ukraine. And what are the stereotypes for the audiences? What are the stereotypes for the artists? Moreover, we're about to discuss what are the main values of the inclusive arts, how it can engage the audience, and we are also going to discuss what are the specifics of promoting and positioning artistic inclusive events, and what are the best ways to grow the audience for the artistic products. I would like to introduce you to our today's panel and today's distinguished speakers. Please welcome Jonathan Harper, the CEO and executive producer of the Para Orchestra Collective from the UK. And Para Orchestra is one of a kind integrated orchestra of professional disabled or non-disabled musicians. The main mission for the collective is to change the idea what orchestra can be. You are playing both the new and traditional old music. They also include digital instruments together with traditional music instruments, which is basically a constant change in the orchestral music world. This is a new type of the orchestra that would fit the rock festivals and the traditional classical concert halls. Another speaker we have is the speaker from Ukraine, Olha Shyshlova, who is the head of the educational department in Pinchuk Art Center. She is the member of the Parent Association for Parents with Children with Down syndrome. She's also a therapist starting from 2012. She is the host of the Art Friends TV show for the Pinchuk Art Center for the people, for the children with disabilities. She's organizing the touristic trips for children and teenagers with disabilities. She has been the author and the host for an interesting educational product that is called the Workshop of Opportunities for Teenagers and adults with mental disabilities. And she has become a curator for an exhibition that is called Full Stop Lines and Opportunities in the Pinchuk Art Center, where they've represented the works of the participants of the workshop she's curating. Another participant from Ukraine is Eva Styshun from Kharkiv. She is usually introduces herself as a free artist and decorator. She is also the author of the social art and inclusive project. She's an activist in the topics of inclusion and ecology. She has been trained in the Artistic University in the theatrical criticism faculty. She has been working with the interior practices and she is now currently looking for the new technology, for the accessibility of the technology for the deaf people. And she's also studying the people with visual impairment, especially in the clay modeling projects, together with Vladislav Yudin, who is an acclaimed sculptor. After this introduction, I think we can stick to the discussion and to the question that we currently would like to cover, because we have a lot of questions today. So let us start with the most general broad question that we can pose, which be actually understanding the context of different countries. Because right now we're going to start with Ukrainian context and the UK context. In your opinion, what does the society think about the arts for disabled and with disabled persons? What are the stereotypes, the key stereotypes concerning inclusive arts in UK, in Ukraine, in Georgia later on? what are the associations with the inclusive arts, and what do you believe, whether audience are ready to accept this kind of product without thinking about the aspect of disability in that? If you would like to answer, please turn on your mic and we're ready to listen to you. Okay, I think I will start. It's Olga Shyshlova speaking. In my opinion, I believe, unfortunately, what I have seen, there is a twofold understanding of these arts. The visitors for the exhibition that I have followed in the Pinchuk Art Center, they can be divided in some certain groups. Some of the people, they believe that the artistic works that they have seen there cause a lot of pity for them, and overall the exhibition for the disabled people, there is once again yet another opportunity to discuss the issue of the rights of people with disability, but it cannot be considered art. Another group of people, another group of visitors believes that everything that has been created by the people with Down syndrome or with people with autistic spectrum or any other disabled people, it has to bring the sunlight because those are the people of sun energy and all of those kind of stereotypes connected to that. So whatever a disabled person or a disabled teenager would do, that deserves its attention because it has been created by the person with disability. So basically, it's just the same thought that the first group represents, but with a slightly different angle. Another type of the audience is the artistic community that has a very different appreciation to that. They believe that those projects and works and pieces are actually the pieces of art. But this kind of understanding and appreciation is still being treated based on the disability principle, first of all.
Shall I talk? I can talk a bit about the UK, perhaps. In a sense, what Ola said is very similar in the UK. You know, just being positive for a second, the last decade in the UK has been an incredibly progressive, positive time for disabled artists in terms of the way that funders that we have in the UK, Arts Council England, British Council, have really focused on inclusion and inclusion of disabled artists as an important part of funding. And organisations such as Para Orchestra would not exist without that money. But there is still a fundamental gap in that the idea that a disabled artist can be exceptional and excellent is still not considered possible by many people that work both in the arts and for audiences as well. There is a reality which is that you have to prove twice as much that you are good at what you do if you're disabled. And nothing can go wrong. You're not allowed to fail. It has to be perfect every time because you're trying to prove yourself every time, which I find really troublesome because other artists are not considered on those merits and other organisations aren't considered under those merits. And we find that within the arts world, we have to prove ourselves. There are people that would not consider Para Orchestra to be good at what they do, however many people tell them because it has disabled artists. That's a fact. Similarly with audiences, in a way, the whole message around disability is always around the worthy angle. You have to be kind to these people. So it's no surprise that when we have audiences that come and see our shows, I would say a percentage of them are there for almost because it's a bit quirky. It's something good to say that you've seen some disabled artists, some disabled musicians at work. And we find a very strange phenomenon in that when we start playing, some people start crying in the audience. And they don't cry because of the emotional value of the music at first. They cry because they're seeing disabled people at work, being brilliant. And that to me feels like a stereotype. The idea that it's so wonderful that these people are given a chance. That's the barrier in place. And we want every time for people to be crying because of the art. I don't need people crying because there is someone in a wheelchair. that artist does not want people crying because they are in a wheelchair, or they may be blind, or they may be deaf. That person wants emotion because of what they're doing on stage. And I still feel like we have a long way to go, because there is not representation across the mainstream in that way, certainly in the UK and abroad.
Well, I believe that we would like to invite Eva to speak up. It's just please keep in mind you have to unmute your microphone. Well, I also would also speak up on my personal experience as well, because I am a person with disability and I'm an artist, and I have been trained as an artist first of all, and I have had a little bit of experience in poetry, and then I switched to the theatrical community, started to work with the choreography and the set design for the theatrical performances, and then I've turned to the interior design, and I have never emphasized my attention that I have any kind of disability, and no one even know that I have some hearing impairment. And I thought that I should I should not speak about that I should hide it in some way. And I felt some certain pressure on me on that, because I didn't have this opportunity to to be trained on the very same level as my other colleagues. I didn't have the opportunity to be on the same level, to be on the equal opportunities with the people I have studied with. So I've had this situation that the people I have been studying with, they are at the best position right now. I have been studying with Artem Volokitin, who has had his exhibition in Pinchuk Art Center. I have been studying with some other artists who are now popular in Europe and all over the world, who are now doing a lot of big things right now. But I have fallen off of this artistic process because I didn't have this opportunity to communicate with them, to be in the overall community. I didn't have this opportunity to comprehend what is going on, how it's being done. So I've got back to the context, to the overall art only with accessibility and with the help of the internet. When I had this opportunity to once again learn, I have studied the artistic photography from the groups from St. Petersburg. I have communicated with those people, and I have started to feel myself an artist and an art critic again. So I had my access to the information again. Then I have made, let us put it this way, kind of coming out, and with my disability. So I have actually said that I've had a hearing impairment and I am a person with disability. So for myself, that has been a way to open up about my own identity, which was very important, because the competition in the artistic world is really high, and you cannot just leave aside the point that you are a person with disability. Unfortunately, you cannot disconnect your disability from who you are. This is your context. This is the context and the building ground for your art as well. So it's a very complex issue. We want to be equal, but we still need some additional conditions. We need accessible conditions, and we need smart equipment, smart conditions to build that. So we cannot be competitive on equal conditions, but we want to be treated with pity. We don't want to be treated from the side of our disability, and they do not want to, to be appreciated just because we have this disability, and we have to be pitied because we are special in some way. No, we want to be equal, but we cannot be on the same equal level because of the conditions and environment right now. I was really worrying when we had the girl on the wheelchair. They had a specific corner in the exhibition when you could just see how she was working. She was an artist, she has a very naive portrait of a Mona Lisa type, and she is doing a lot of paysages, a lot of landscape, because and she couldn't move that because of the limited mobility, but those landscape that she has painted was basically her fantasy landscape, her desire for the free movements. And people started crying there at that exhibitions of hers. And I felt the big responsibility for that as a curator for that exhibition, because I'm exploiting this topic. been invited person who doesn't believe she's an artist, but she's painting for herself. And I've made her into a symbol, into an overall image, an emphasis of the arts as well. But it has given me the information on how the audience treats the arts of people with disability. It is seen through the stereotypes. Yes, people are starting to cry and pity disabled people. And it's no more about arts. The art is now secondary. This art and their masterpieces are only being considered as a life story of a live person. How to divide it? I don't know. It's an open question. This is a challenge that has to be yet resolved. So yes, there is this problem of stereotyping in this case, and there's a huge platform for experience, for discussion, for us to find how to do that in that way, so it will not intervene with appreciation of the art, but in the same time you would not lose your identity. So you would actually identify that, you know, I am a person with disability, but not to influence how your product will be praised and appreciated later on. Thank you very much, Eva, for that. You've basically covered partly the second question that I have, and maybe I can also voice it out. Maybe some of the speaker would like to add up to that, because my second question is because you know, the situation is slightly different in Ukraine, slightly different in UK, and slightly different in Georgia. And we hope that speaker from Georgia will join us as soon as possible. So right now we have the situation as it is. We have people who treat disabled artists with pity, someone who doesn't believe that it is art in its sense. For some people, this is the moment of climax, and the people understand, like, these people have fewer opportunities than I have. Why am I not cherishing my life? Because, like, audience, they live through their own context when they see that. But what is the role and what is the value for the inclusive art and the art of the disabled in your country, in your community? What kind of function in your opinion, inclusive art plays? What kind of role it plays in your local artistic community, in the community, local artistic scene or the country scene? So what do you believe? What is the value and what is the role of the inclusive art?
So our mission is fundamentally to prove that disability and excellence can be linked. So that's the simplest bit, which is that we recognise that in the music sector in the UK, professional disabled musicians, there is a stereotype and there are barriers in place that do not allow them to perform in the best of their ability. And our job is to break that down in all manner of ways, whether it's the conditions that they can work in, whether it's the access they have to a stage, whether it's the facilities, whether it's the assistance that they have, whether it's the quality of the music that they're playing. But societal shift it's although it is hard to quantify, you know, we work and we live in a fractured society, and it's becoming more fractured as we go on. And the COVID-19 pandemic has disproportionately impacted on disabled people in the UK, both in their financial health, in their well-being, and in their health. You know, you're 11 times more likely to die of COVID in the UK if you are disabled. So there's something fundamental, I think, to Para Orchestra, which is it shines a spotlight on a positive, fair society, on a society where, you know, anyone has a place at the table, whoever they are, whatever their disability or a stereotype that exists. And those stereotypes take time to break down, but it requires organizations like Para Orchestra, artists, you know, and partners to work together and present that to the mainstream, to audiences and to funders and to other organizations, because, you know, we all have bias. We all have conscious bias. We also have plenty of unconscious bias, and those things take time to understand and to break down. So yeah.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. We'll just start, and because I believe what I see as the main thing that is happening in the framework of our project is that we have started as a studio that has been working with different artists, and we had some people who in time have started to call themselves and recognize themselves as artists because the art has become the part of their life. And for some certain participants for our workshop, this can actually become a profession later on. And I can see that in our case, in this case that we currently have, there is the big shift for the participants themselves. And this is the shift in the families as well. Like about their children, for example, that their children have already grown up, that they can create something good and beautiful if they do not answer the questions how you expect them to. So they see that as the path for the professional development. And as for this mission for arts in the society, well, first of all, I see that it changes the organizations that work with those projects. They change these social overview, and I have felt it in our example. But I believe the more projects we have, as the projects that we do, the more we will see the arts of disabled people in different spheres, the easier it will be for our audiences to praise and appreciate those art projects and not to be frustrated on what not to be frustrated for those feelings that they have, not to be frustrated by disability. I know that each and every one of us, we do all have it. And when we see a person and, a person with any kind of illness, we do not want, and, person who feels bad, we don't want to touch this person or be close to them because we can catch that as well. But I do believe that we have to work a lot in this direction so that society and different audiences would be conscious enough so that, those unconscious desires would be cut off, for them to be cut off in the same time as they appear, for us just to be aware of those reactions. I do believe it will take time. I do believe it will take a lot of money. I do believe it will take a lot of people who will work on that and many, many, many projects to come.
Thank you, Olga and Ivar. I could see that you wanted to answer as well. I wanted to add that this is the period of turbulence which we need to overcome and to cope with because we don't have any practical habit in the overall context of art where would be both people with disabilities and people without disabilities. That is why it's so important to create this playground, to make it vaster and broader. And until we have just interest, why people are coming there, because they're interested what that is, inclusion is. Everybody is asking what that word is, inclusion, what does it mean? They would like to see and to understand it. Sometimes they respond in an unexpected or maybe negative way. They may be crying, but this is a normal process because we used to be separate. It was totally separate. Every group of people with disabilities existed in their own bubble. They communicated with each other only and they created their own separate subculture. So I'm working with the people who are hearing impaired, and they have their own separate subculture, their own language, their cultural language, their some of the symbols. They are not understandable for the wider audience, and they do not understand and they are not interested in the whole culture, the whole world art, because they have their own little culture of their own. And also the people which are visually impaired, they have their own subculture. We don't know, we are saying the word the viewer, but if we speak about the people who is visually impaired, who that person is, so we are creating the whole project, which is in fact should be modeling or sculpturing, only touching. So to understand what is the viewer is, they are just looking with their hands because they are visually impaired, and we don't know how they do that. We have to research it. We have to be very attentive to each other. We need to give ourselves time for people without disabilities and time for people with disabilities to get used to this overall practice, to create projects which maybe will never visited by anyone. I wanted to show this, to create the screening with the subtitles, but no one of the people, hearing impaired people, came. And I asked why, and they said, we are not interested to watch the movies about the people who are not, don't know the sign language. So to get to know that, we had to create this experience. I didn't know that. We need to go on doing that. We shouldn't stop on that. We shouldn't be afraid of this response. And when one girl, an artist, cried at my exhibition, I told her, well, you know, your tears is a response for me, an answer. I don't want people to cry. I want someday to have some time when all of us are coming, watching, communicating, and we don't have those negative responses anymore. We are not that touched anymore. We are equal. So that is why we need lots of things to do for that. We need to get to know lots of things, to ask questions of each other, and to get to know what's the request, what's the interest among different groups, to understand what exactly they need. So for the whole year, we are dealing with the project of the modeling and sculpturing by touch and molding in clay. So to understand the difference between visually impaired and only one boy wanted to deal with that molding on his own. That was his choice. We couldn't say, please come to us, we will train you. The person may not want to. The person needs to choose in a creative way. His or her creative way is rather complicated. We cannot make it just such some good, an overall good for everyone, because it's not that easy for a person with disabilities. And if he or she wants to deal with art therapeutic practices or creative practices, he or she needs to understand that it will be complicated. There are no conditions. We don't have conditions in the high educational institutions, in the schools. No one deals with that. There are no specialists and experts who would train the people with disabilities. So we need to offer this topic gradually, one by one. We should develop it, and the people with disabilities will choose on their own whether they need it, whether they want it, maybe they don't. So that is why we need to create the conditions and to look how they will perceive that. We cannot just make the conclusion instead of people whom we are not, and we don't know how they perceive it. That is why it's a very huge and a very long way. We need to be courageous, and we should develop mutual understanding. I do hope that if we unite our efforts, we'll have more efficient and powerful cases, which we will share and create the more efficient projects and products. Thank you, Eva. Well, in fact, it's a very important aspect about the free choice. It's both important for the artists with disabilities who choose whether they want to become an artist, and it's also important for the audience who chooses what to watch, this or that type of art, not just to perform their social duty. So for the people who are in the opinion of the society can have fewer opportunities, but in fact we don't know that because everybody is in his or her own situation. We also have one more speaker joining us from Georgia, from Tbilisi, Ekaterina Mazmishvili, who's an art director of the Tbilisi Theatre International Festival. So Katerina was working for the public, for the audience of the festival, to see the art of the people with disabilities. And it's important to add that this festival is conducted every year. It's a very high scale theater event, not only in Georgia, but in the Caucasus region. It attracts attention of the most famous, creative, provocative, and innovative theater productions of the whole world. So maybe we'll come to the next question now. I do invite Ekaterina, please join us. We have the free mic, so whoever wants, he or she answers. And we are gradually coming closer to the question, well, of the name of our discussion. That is, who are those people? Who those people are? who are the audience, the viewers of the art of disabled people? Can we distribute them into categories? Do we have any tendencies in that? Did we speak about the people who understood where they're going, or there is some type of the audience who are just coming there in crowds? Do we speak about the close circle of people or distant people? And if we're speaking about the viewers and the audience of your art, whether it's music or theater or fine arts, do you see this cross-section with other viewing audiences in your country, in your city, and which of them? And one more question, the viewers who are coming, which values they have, why are they coming? Did you ask yourselves those questions, or maybe you listened to their conversations and you know that? And in case of Jonathan and Olga and Eva and Ekaterina, has this audience changed during this period of time while you're working? This is a very huge question, so I do invite you to speak out to the mic.
Should I start? Yes. First of all, hello everybody, and I'm very sorry for being late to join you. I had all of a sudden issues at home, and I couldn't leave my kid alone. So, and I cannot work from home. It's impossible, because my son is 11 months old and it is impossible. So I'm really very sorry to be late, but I did everything to come and to join you, because this is a very important thing for such a very a professional and high quality festival to work, to start working with people with disabilities. And we started it long ago. And we started it occasionally. It was not the purpose, first of all, and it was not. And when we started, we had no aim with to work with it. So I want to join you with the question, with the last thing that you said. If the audiences changed since we started working with such productions and with the artists with disabilities. And I would say one thing, which is very important. I think that audience was much better prepared for such performances, for such artists, and for such works than we, the festival organizers. When they first, usually I always say, and it is my experience, that usually audience is somehow much in advance than we offer the things. We are afraid to do, to cross this or that border. We are sometimes afraid, I mean, not afraid, but we are very cautious to do the things, because part of the festival and part of the theater is also commercial. So we are thinking that, oh, we might lose the audience, or they will not be interested in this or that. They need big names, big things, but that's not true. They are working, they need everything, and they want everything. How the audience changed? First of all, they received these works with great interest and great happiness. And this encouraged us to go on and work a lot with artists with disabilities. They changed, of course. This audience is much more now open, and the audience, these kind of works helped us to make audience more open to receive unknown, yet unknown, or yet the things that they have not experienced. And they want to cross the borders themselves, first of all. So they become this one huge conglomerate with the artists working on the stage. And the audience, first when we started with such works, we have not announced that this is, for example, performance, or this is the work, or this is the thing with artists with disabilities, because we started with long ago with one company from Jerusalem. Then it was Pipo del Bono company, and then we started to work with British Council a lot. The same it was, and I want to say that the same we are doing with theater, because first British Council performance with Ken Doko was in Mazmishvili Theater. And it was really when audience with disabilities joined us. It was the first time. Because the first, at the festival, the first two performances I told you, they were just, not announced as a works with disabilities, so it was regular audience. And suddenly, with the performances on Mazmishvili stage, very young audience joined us. And then we went on working with them because they came from audience to stage. And we staged one performance, which was very difficult and very, let's say, I don't say unsuccessful, but it was very short because it was not possible to go on with it for a long time. And then we did one more performance that lasted in our repertoire for 2 or 3 years. And it was a Little Prince with a young boy with visual impairment. So what we are looking for in general is to make everybody, all people, everybody who comes to this theater or who comes to festival, make for them clear that all people, that there are no limits, and everybody can be involved in artistic work. This is our aim. So we are, and in different way, like we are all different people. We do some things very well. We don't do the other things very well. It's the same. So this is what we are aiming. And this is why we are trying to go on with this work now already for several years. And with a big, we are very proud of it because we are, I don't say that the only festival or only theater, but we are that works with people with disabilities and that invites artists who work in their productions together with the already established company. This is not the only theater, but we are, let's say, more experienced than the others in Georgia. I was listening to Eva, and I do also, I also think the same. We don't need tears, or we don't need emotions. We need to act. We need to act to include these people in the society. And for example, Georgia was very closed for those people for many, many times, and especially high quality arts or, big festivals or big events were not quite, but really closed for audience for disabilities and for artists. So now this is opening, and we are trying to be very, very cautious. We're trying to be very, very good with them, so with audience in general, so that we don't divide them in parts, first of all. We make, but at the same time, somehow we have to divide because we have different entrance. This theater is where we are working. Mazmishvili Theater is very old. It's the building is more than 100 years old, and it is not very easy to make easy for all of this the audience with disabilities to enter the theater and to move there and to leave. So we are dividing just because of the entrances. In the first, let's say the general entrance is 3 or 4. Quite high, and we cannot make the there is also regulations as a cultural building that has a cultural heritage. But starting from let's forget this entrance, starting from that, there is a possibility, let's say, for regular audience to be better, to be more open. And this is the same with artists. When they worked with the young, for example, the last work, right? Where with the young boy who had visual impairments, that was very important experience for them. They discovered in themselves also some additional things that they couldn't see otherwise. I think I did I miss the point, or it's in the what?
Так, Ека, ще раз повторюю.
Yes, Eka, and again, I would say that we are so happy that you managed to join. The experience of your theater is so valuable. I would like to add a bit, because last year we had a performance within the Festival of Inclusion. Besides my installation with performances, the human factor, we had the performance of a different organization, Locus People, that was the name of it, and the performance had the name behind the ramp. So it was it were the stories of the people from the vulnerable groups, the people with disabilities, the mother of a child with disabilities, and other vulnerable stories. But I was just a viewer. I was in the audience. I just came without knowing anything about the context of the show because I was busy with my own project. I just came to the event and I saw a really cool actor who was sitting and was pretending he's a bus driver. So me, as a theater critic in the past, I really liked his way of performance. I was shocked in the end to get to know in the end that this was the person with disability, that this was the person with cerebral spastic infantile paralysis. I considered that without any prejudice, I was just a viewer and a theater critic. I didn't even know that he has any disability. So this feedback from me was more important than any gifts he had of books. Or they began to praise him just because they knew that he is a person with a disability. So just they made him separate from the whole collective. It was not proper. It was a bit unpleasant for me, in fact. But I was watching the show without the subtitles and without the sign language interpretation, because I don't know sign language that now. I only began to study it now. I have a basic level only. So we invited an interpreter, but sign language interpreter, but for me, the interpretation wouldn't even help. But the people who were hearing impaired, they didn't come. So I just tried to perceive it as it is. But it's important for me to say that such viewers as I am, they are ready to come. If it is accessible, they will come again. And such people like him, they can play in the shows. And it's not that compulsory to mention that this is the person with disability. This is not the main factor in the perception. So when we begin to exploit this topic, to use it, then we begin a bit of a different in the perception. So we need really to make it a cool art product. The quality should be much more important. But who takes part in that? Which maybe needs they have? Those are details. This is their cuisine. But for the viewers, for those who are coming to watch, the main thing should be the quality, the essence, the art essence, the level of the art. And that's it, nothing more. All the rest is just details. Thank you, Eva. I would like also to come back to the topic because we are now coming to rather interesting details, and it's so valuable that you're, Eva, with us. You're giving us an opportunity to watch it from a different perspective at the situation. So I'd like now to speak to Olga and to Jonathan about your viewing audiences, who those people are. Did you have any changes in the audiences? Why are they coming, if you think, why are they coming to watch your performances? Did you research
May I
them?
add something to what Eva said?
Still, if you don't mind, I would like to give the floor to Olga and Jonathan now, because this question is really the key question, but you could add something after them. I would like to say that peculiarity of our project was that It has been planned as an educational project for the people who have disabilities, and we have never planned to organize and to conduct an exhibition. The essence of the project was that weekly we dealt with art, with the people with disabilities, and it worked out that some of them are identifying themselves as the artists. The exhibition is just one of the reflections of our work. So it's the first one. So I cannot say how our viewer has changed. The only thing that I'm happy that Pinchuk Arts Center is the institution in the center of Kiev, and it has lots of viewers and huge audience because this institution is well known, and lots of people are coming to the exhibition just because they got used to come to Pinchuk Arts Center. And also it seems to me that for similar art projects, it is important for the exhibitions, performances, musical concert, and so on to take place not just in some separate abandoned places, but in the places which have already the well-developed, enriched audience, lots of people visiting who can come, who listening to the lectures in Facebook or YouTube, who have subscribed to Instagram. They will read about this project and get to know more about it. And in this way, it seems to me this is our way, and it happens like this. Whether our viewers were ready to the exhibition, well, I don't know. But if we look at the Instagram profile, I can see the same what happened when people and the viewers began to get acquainted with the modern art, contemporary art. Well, because our viewer has never known this modern art during the Soviet times. And first, lots of the people were rather emotional when they responded onto the provocative art. I'm seeing this similar reaction on the art objects which have been created by people with disabilities. It seems to me it's totally okay because any art object, contemporary art object, whoever created it, leads to some emotions, which could be both negative or either negative or positive. And also, I like that this is not the only exhibition which take place in Pinchuk Art Center, as at other floors of we have the exhibition of the young artists, the prize, Pinchuk Art Prize awards. So those are the simultaneous projects, and the people who are coming to one exhibition, they come to a different one, and vice versa. And it seems to me that it's also working.
Thank you, Ola. And we also have some explanation for Jonathan and Ekaterina, because basically Pinchuk Art Center is a already renowned contemporary art center in the center of Kiev. So it kind of has association about, it's associated with equality. So basically, maybe you can also inform you of what are we talking about. But Jonathan, I would like to ask you to tell us a bit of the para orchestra experience and what is your audience and how it changed, if it did.
Yeah, we've been on a journey in terms of who our audience is, and there's like our major moment for para orchestra is recognizing that there are hundreds of thousands of orchestras in the world. They're all playing the same music that they've been playing for centuries. They all look the same. They all perform on a concert hall stage. They're all, I mean, there's no criticism, that's what they do. We don't need another orchestra like that, but just with disabled people. So we started off trying to be an orchestra, attracting an audience that was perhaps the same as an orchestra, and then had an epiphany along the way where, because our artistic director, Charles Hazelwood, he's always pushed to do anything but be in an orchestra. He's conducted across the world. He's always tried to be different. And we started working across art forms, working with dance, working with light designers and artists. We started looking again at what the music was and reconsidering that perhaps playing a piece of Brahms that's been played by every other orchestra is not necessary. So commissioning composers to rework contemporary music by artists like Kraftwerk. We also started looking at where we were performing. So it was, a concert hall is great, but we don't just play in a concert hall. We play at music festivals like Glastonbury. We play in theatres, on stages, we play in foyers, we play in art galleries. And as soon as we went for the blank sheet of paper and started to just really reconfigure what an orchestra could be this century, our audience started changing. And our audience now is much younger, more diverse, much more engaged with social media, much more responsive to the work that we're creating. One of the things that we're really keen on is to break down the barrier that exists between the artist and the audience. So bringing audiences closer to the action. We have a piece called The Nature of Why, which is performed on a stage with the audience with us on a stage. It's immersive, which is actually quite difficult because of COVID now. We have to wait for that to go before we can perform it again, which is sad, but it will be back. And the whole idea is 200 people are within the space with the orchestra who move around them, and there's a dance company involved. The music has been written by Goldfrapp, who are a contemporary pop band. So our whole aim is not to ghettoize disabled musicians and to ghettoize orchestras. It is all about reaching out and attracting a new audience to orchestral music, to power orchestra. And it really worked. 40% of our audience have never been to an orchestral concert before. We're just as likely to perform at a theatre festival as we are at a music festival. We take, when someone asks us to play, I think they expect us to turn up and play a concert repertoire. And that's not how it works with us. We do a show. The whole point is we make a show. Next year, we're going to make a show, an outdoor show rather than an indoor show because of the coronavirus pandemic and the safety of our audiences. And that's the start. We start with the art, and then the marketing campaign is built around that to attract that new audience.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jonathan. It is a pleasure to actually hear that what you have said, and all of our the other speakers said, that there is the younger audience coming to us, because basically there is a stereotypes that said that the first audience for the arts of the disabled people, there are the families of the disabled people, then the senior generation. So it's very cool and interesting to hear that a lot of different audiences come if they don't have any kind of family connections or any other relations to disability themselves. We'll get into the final question, but we still have a comment from Eka. So Eka, is your comment still relevant? Do you still would like to comment and to add up to the general discussion? Please, you're welcome.
I think it's all the same. It's like, I just wanted to add that, of course, it's all matters how we present the work. So our audiences are, I never had experience with audiences that consist of only of family members or friends or acquaintances. I just didn't have this. And I think that was the right way to present the work, like part of the festival, part of theater repertoire, not emphasizing anything else at the beginning. I mean, so that was, but I wanted one more thing, but maybe the next question is about it. I wanted to talk about digital technology with, and this new technology that is taking this art to the whole new level. And, but maybe your question is, your last question also touches this topic. If not, I will just make a short comment afterwards.
Знаєте, якщо всі спікери не проти,
Well, basically, if all of the speakers do not mind, then I think that we'll briefly have answered the question of promoting and marketing inclusive art, because all of us has spoken about that partly. And I do believe we're like-minded here that we should not emphasize inclusivity in traditional way. We should look for non-standard approaches. It's not about, disability is the main point for us to market our art, but we have to market the art that we create. So I would like to stick to Aka's offer to make this challenge for all of us and to have this question and this topic for discussion from Aka, like this digital technologies. What do you believe are the pros and cons for digital technologies? What are your experiences of using digital technologies in creating and promoting your product? So Aka, I think that you can start, you can open up with this digital topic. That could be our final question. And if we will be brief, we will meet our time limits as well.
Eva wants to say something, or should I say? Or maybe, okay. I just wanted to say that we started working with digital technology, with new technology in theater. Basically, let's say we are doing here the first steps. Let's say, because if I look at the world, what is done in Big Britain, in Japan, in Germany, these are the first steps, let's say. But we understand that, and it is absolutely obvious that this new technology takes first theater productions or just work of artists to a whole new level. And it is a new possibility for people with disabilities to be integrated in the works and to have new possibilities that are beyond existing limits. And I think that that will be a very good way to have more inclusion in arts, in theater especially, and in different ways. Of course, for example, the motion capture for people with visual impairment is very good possibility, or people who are on the wheelchairs. There is also, capturing possibilities and many other things. I don't have really examples now, but when we started working with the new technology, we understood that with this direction, the art of disabled people could be very different on stage from what we've been doing together with them until now. It could be more diverse, with more expressive possibilities for them, and definitely more possibilities for the audience.
Thank you very much, Eka. I remember Eva would like to also speak up, please. Yes, I wanted to tell you a little bit about technologies because I'm a very active user of the technologies. I have the speech recognizing tools that has been provided by Google, and there is only one institution that is basically the only one who accepts the people with hearing impairment. There's a lot of people from all over the world that are being studied there, but there is no basically people from Ukraine or Russia, and because the countries usually pay for the training for the people at this university. And a lot of people who I know who are visually impaired, they're also using any additional applications at all of the different devices that help them to appraise arts in a different way. And last year at the Inclusion Festival for our hackathon in Garage Hub, I have brought 3 inclusive tasks to make a mobile ramp that would be that's lightweighted so that a person with disability could carry that with themselves. So they would need any additional aid for that. So that would be a very lightweighted construction that can be, for example, adjusted to the wheelchair that will provide this opportunity for the person to move freely, because it's really hard to find a ramp in our city. It's really hard to move around the city because of the lack of the ramps. And as Ola has said, that it's important to have this big exhibitions and big activities at the platforms where a lot of people can join. But we do not have this kind of platforms because they are not accessible enough. And that was the project that we made, like our human factor project will be made in Yermilov Center, in the main artistic platform in our city, but it's not accessible for people in wheelchairs. So this is a very big problem. The technology is very important. Technology is a way for that art to become more accessible. And together with our sculptors, we have made another technological thing. We have made 3D masks for people with visual impairments, because the people who have been born with visual impairment, they cannot understand emotion, the mimics of the face properly. So those masks, they should have represented emotion so that the people with visual impairment would feel how the emotion is made. So, but it costs a lot of money. It costs a lot of money and a lot of resources. You have to engage a lot of sponsors for that to make this mobile ramps, subtitles in the movie theaters or the theaters. I cannot go to the theaters to our city because we don't have subtitles available there. The only theater with subtitles is the theater for opera and ballet. But I'm not really interested in opera and ballet because I have a very different interest to that. So that is a huge issue that how to be dealt with. And I do believe that technology can make our all easier. We would like to have an exhibition in Yermilov Center, and as Olga has said, that we have just started with a simple project with the sculpting through touch, but we have now had so much material accumulated, so many materials accumulated, that we're about to turn it into an exhibition. And we will have this exhibition in place, but we now have to deal it with the ramps, accessibility. We will make the specific line, the touchable physical line, so that people with visual impairment, it would be also possible for them to move through the exhibition properly. We will make a mock-up model so that you can see in what way you can move through this territory, because there's not a single art platform or exhibition center does not think about people with visual impairment, of how they're going to be going and how they're going to be moving through these spaces. They need to ask for additional aid, and that's already a barrier. So technologies will create this availability and accessibility for all of these different platforms, festivals, events. And how I understand what my role is and what my mission is to inform that it is actually possible. At the New Year Eve, we have this a corporate event for all of these cultural managers who have been dealing with many different events. And I came there and I've told every single person there that if you will need some kind of expertise or expert ideas, I have a lot of people with hearing impairments, vision impairments. I can help you to know what is that needed, what do they need, what kind of conditions should be created. And there was all the time the single answer for most of the people in different ways, but what they've said, that they're afraid to do something wrong. They do not start to do anything just because they're afraid to do something wrong. They are afraid that if they're going to do something wrong, then they will be hated, they will be criticized. They do not want to risk. And I'm offering them to make those smaller steps towards one another, not to try to resolve the global issues straight away, because we understand it won't happening in the fastest nearest time, but step by step, little by little, making this smaller and accessible places, accessible events, accessible platforms, and then later on using this experience, continuing developing this topic. Well, for me, the main barrier is this fear and the lack of understanding. If we communicate more, if we will build more trust, if we will build mutual understanding, then everything will be better. Thank you, Eva. We have started a very global issue of architectural accessibility, and of course there is the issue of the digital technologies that is very huge issue. I have seen that Jonathan would like to reflect on that because I know that you're using the digital instruments. Maybe you would like to add up something more about digital technologies in para orchestra and in your experiences, please.
We need technology. A number of our musicians can't perform with traditional instruments and use electronic instruments, and we don't quite understand why other orchestras are so wedded to a certain way of performing. You know, a certain instrument that has to be a classical instrument to be an orchestra. We don't agree with that. You can play what you want if you are a professional stand-in para orchestra. I mean, there are particular instruments that musicians perform with who identify as disabled, who need them because they use eye gaze technology. So if they cannot use either their arms or their legs, they can still play an instrument. I mean, I would definitely reflect that for an audience as well, you know, technology is vital in terms of accessibility. You know, and it has to be part of the thought process of an organization or an artist, that if they want to be truly accessible, they have to create art that has accessibility built in from the ground up, whether that is subtitling, audio description, whether it's sign language, you know, all of those things which then may cost something, they need to be in from the start, and the budget needs to be adapted for that. And then separately, we're starting to think about how audiences such as deaf audiences that want to experience our work, and how can they get the same level of feelings. You know, they're talking to us about missing out an element of seeing para orchestra because they can't hear it. And we're part of a project that is investigating how haptic technology can be developed so that someone can have a device that will help them feel the music in a different way. And those things feel like way and above streaming an event on YouTube. Those kind of things for me just feel like a whole new dawn. You know, audiences accessing events that they haven't been able to access in the same way for a long time, and maybe having a better experience because of the technology. That's fascinating terrain.
Thank you, Jonathan. And I think that this is the last comment from Olga Shyshlova, and we're going to finalize our discussion for today. Okay, thank you. I would like to tell you that basically the digital technologies, even for 3 years ago, we have been doing the very big projects in the sensors and the virtual reality, and we have tried out this tool on creating the objects in virtual space, in creating artistic objects in virtual spaces. And it was very interesting because now from any single point of our planet, you can go into this unified space. There is a whole city that has been built by people with mental disabilities, but there are some certain aspects, because if we speak about virtual reality, then we need much more research, because I'm working with a very specific group of people. So I do believe that not all of the teenagers can wear this virtual reality goggles. So basically, they cannot wear those virtual reality helmets or additional equipment. So we have to deal with that as well. But the easiest technologies that we have started working with was Zoom, and our workshop of opportunities has been broadened towards all of the territory of Ukraine, because we have now the participants that we have been working distantly through Zoom. We have been prepared for this exhibition, and she could have joined us because we have started working online. We have started working in Zoom using new technologies. But what I also believe that it gives us this new opportunities to broadening your audiences, the new opportunities in working with people with disability as well. Even when you're working in Zoom, you don't have this opportunity to see what is going on in a different place or in a different apartment when participant is located. You understand sometimes that in the physical space, you would come up to the person and give some certain advice. And here you do not do that. So it gives more freedom to our participants. But what I also believe that we have to still continue in working and considering that, because online products, they have to be high quality and good as well, because we need certain time to shape it properly. If we're speaking about the visual arts exhibitions, then when you are in a gallery or in a museum, then you're going through certain experience. And I do believe it's a completely different experience when you're only watching at the computer screen. So we have to think of how can we recreate that experience. And I would like to also comment upon the previous question that we have discussed, because Anastasiya has said that yes, all of us, we are not trying to emphasize the disability aspect, but while working with people, with parents or caregivers of our participants, we have discussed those concepts of how we can do the representation of our work. It was clear for us that at least for our society, we should always voice out the disability moment as well, because in time it will build up a different approach and different opinions towards that. Because in time, with good institutions, with good projects, we can change the approach to that. Because disability is one of the angles of personality, and a lot of people, they are really afraid of the word disability itself. And we have to work with that. We have to deal with that. And I do believe that it's a very important issue because it really depends, it's really sensitive to the territory and the stage of the development of the society you are in. It's sometimes even sensitive for the artists themselves and their families. Thank you, Ola. Thank you, Ola. I feel that there is a lot of potential to continue in this discussion because it has been a definitely interesting team of speakers today, but we have to wrap up, not to take a lot of time. So once again, I would like to thank to all of our speakers who we've had today. We've had Eva Styshun with us for the curator of the Sculpting by Touch from Kharkiv, Jonathan Harper for para orchestra from UK, Olha Shyshlova from Pinchuk Art Center, and Ekaterina from the Georgian theater, from the Tbilisi Theatre Festival from Georgia. We have tried to briefly cover the topics of the audience for the inclusive art. We have spoken about how these arts are being treated by the people from many different countries. We discussed what are the main basic values and how the approaches, differences, and the conditions for the artistic work are differing from different countries and different artistic spheres. We've discussed what is the audience, who is the audience, and we've also spoken on the topic of the digital technologies in each of your directions. Thank you very much, Ekaterina, for mentioning this idea. And I hope we'll manage to meet all personally in person after the lockdown and after the pandemic. And I wish you the best audiences for all of your projects to come. Thank you.